in Niagara have had enough with cameras, and we're starting to see people taking out cameras in Canada. And these are the people who are not wearing capes, but certainly filling the role, right? Gas prices are spiking everywhere. I'm going to show you that. The carbon tax just went up last week, and it's being felt at the pumps and soon will be felt at the grocery stores. Government wants to invest billions of dollars into AI. They're going to hire GC Strategies to do it. They're great at building things. Wink. That's a joke if you've been paying attention. Personal Information Bank. If you've been paying attention, you still probably haven't heard of this. Theo Fleury's sounding the alarm. We'll talk about that. Brazil. What's going on in Brazil? Brazil is gunning after Elon Musk. And Mike Pence thinks that it is a CIA operation to use Brazil and their judiciary to give account or credibility to this action, and go after Musk through that route, and then maybe shut Twitter off country by country using the U.S. State Department as using different countries as proxies of the U.S. State Department or CIA or whoever it is that you want to attribute to the spooks, right? The bad guys, the spies. To doing this, Bence thinks it's them. And so it's very interesting color on that. We'll have a look at that and examine that too a little bit. But Brazil is entering a period of, tyranny, it looks like, and worse than Canada, but also in lockstep with Canada, right? And I think that that's something to note, very, very concerning. Bird flu. There's a bird flu. People are speculating the bird flu is, I already did that. The bird flu is very interestingly timed to coincide with the WHO getting their new treaty powers to declare pandemics and all of the rest of it. And the WHO is pushing more for this thing to get signed. Wouldn't that just spur people to sign off their responsibility to a supranational globalist agency right at the dawn of the bird flu, right? Don't you think? So we'll look at that. I think that it's certainly a plan, and I'm not going to comply with the lockdown. I didn't then for COVID, and I won't now for a bird flu. So I'll order the hamburger when mad cow is rampant in England. Okay, so I'm not playing your game, everyone. There's lots to get to. Let's get to it. First, Pierre Poilievre, and he's talking about The Economist and housing. We have to start at housing. And he says from The Economist magazine, April 4th, 2024, that's this year, Trudeau is not worth the cost. When Mr. Trudeau took office, a household earning the median income would cover the cost of owning an average home by spending 39% of their pay, according to RBC, a bank. Now that figure is 64%, soaring interest. So it's just a clip from a larger article, but soaring interest is the reason for that. And that's, almost double, right? 39, 64, not quite double, 20%. Huge, massive increase. People can't afford a doubling of their housing costs. That's asking far too much of Canadians, right? Here's, I said they hate us and they want us to die. So if you look at the 1960s, there's 5 kids, 4 kids, and 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom house, right? 1970s, 3 kids and a 5-bedroom house. 1980s, 2 kids, and the 1980s, that's when I grew up. I remember it being a little bit bigger than that, but this is a smaller shack than the 1970s house. And I guess I grew up in the smaller shack, so it didn't seem like a smaller shack to me. 1990s was row housing, but I was in an apartment, or not an apartment in 1990s. I was going to high school, so I was still in the same family home. 2010s, right, going forward, because the 1990s and the 2000s kind of blur together through Y2K. Although by 2008, the economy meltdown, all the rest of it. I guess there are big differences between the early 1990s and the early 2000s, so maybe 2000s should be in there. But by the 2010s, it's 2 single people and a dog. 1990s are two parents and a single child, rather than the 1980s, 2 parents and 2 children. And 2010s is two parents and a dog, right? And 2020s is 2 wage slaves and a cat. So all of this is policy driven. And if we demanded a single income be enough to run your family and no tax on people who are having children, which is women, right? So there's all sorts of income tax. Why have we not rolled income tax back? There are all sorts of issues with what's going on. This is very accurate. This is how culture and a society dies, right? And we're watching it in real time, and we're actually in the late stages of all that. Justin Trudeau wants to sell everyone modular homes. Yesterday I showed this ad. Don't worry, I'm not going to show it again, but he's walking through the modular home factory and he's saying it's innovative. We're using 3D printing. I'm sure they've got AI robots and Optimists walking around doing the finishing touches on the inside, right? But Green Crow, and I highlighted this yesterday. Here's Justin Trudeau doing a TV ad for his buddy, special raconteur David Johnston's modular home manufacturing company. So Johnston's on the board, so say the internet scuttlebutt yesterday. And that's interesting because is there not a conflict of interest with Justin Trudeau hawking a company that belongs to, or when GC Strategies has spot on their board, they call up Dalian and say, hey, I need somebody on my board of directors. Sure, you'll make money from all the things that we do. You'll have this stipend, you'll have some stocks in it, and so on and so forth, right? And so you say, sure. And then when Dalian and GC Strategies get called in and you see the web of all these people who are presidents and board of directors and so on and so forth, it looks the same as this government stuff. Is this not a conflict of interest, right? Is that not something to be concerned about? Larry Brock seems really concerned about it with Dalian and GC Strategies. So would this not be something that's concerning? If this is true, that David Johnston is on the board of this company that makes these modular homes, then Justin Trudeau doing an ad for those, could that not be seen as payback for the very, very soft touch that Johnston took with the foreign Chinese influence inquiry that basically said Justin Trudeau did nothing wrong? Please help me make lots of money with my modular home company, right, Justin? After letting you off the hook on that whole Chinese infiltration in our government thing, right? Like, it seems icky to me. It seems totally plausible as well. Maybe not, but it seems that I have questions, and other people do too, right? This is the same company that's going to get a lucrative government contract. Conflict of interest, kickbacks, anyone? Right? So it just seems odd, doesn't it? It just seems really strange. And so Canada has had Justin Trudeau kick off an immigration routing, like we've just been flooded with immigrants, and we don't have the housing capacity to house them. We don't have the education. We don't have the capacity to educate the kids that are coming. Oh, I'm sorry, there aren't any kids coming. We don't have the capacity to care for the elderly that are coming. We don't have the capacity to serve the people who are coming with provincial services that the provinces are usually supposed to provide. Our shelters are full with foreigners who are illegals. Our hotels are full to the tune of $100 million a year. We are being flooded by migrants. And Justin Trudeau's solution to this is to continue flooding the country with migrants and build modular homes. And Japan looks at this and says, we've got to get in on this immigrant game. The Diplomat from 2021 says Japan is changing its immigration and refugee policy. Tokyo has long been criticized for restrictive immigration policy. Can it change? So in 2021, the globalists were trying to get Japan to change. And Japan's been really, really rocked recently with lots of changes at the top of their government. There's been, like, the government falls and then a new government takes over, and then that falls and then the next one takes over. So I was following Corbett report on it a little bit, and he was talking about it a little bit. I don't know if it's calmed down, but there's been periods of change in Japan. Like, first they were not for the COVID thing, and then they were all over the COVID thing, and they weren't mandating shots, and it got really messy, and it's still really messy. But fast forward to now, and here's the report I saw yesterday. Japan invites 820,000 Nigerians, other foreign workers, as it battles labor shortages. Just like the labor shortages in Canada that spark lineups around the block for low-wage retail jobs, right? Like, that seems like a lie. That seemed, I feel like Maury Povich, right? The lie detector says that was a lie. So I'm skeptical. I'm skeptical, just like I'm skeptical of the reason that we need to import people who we can't serve and house for labor reasons, right? I don't think so. It doesn't look like that. It really looks like we're just being invaded, and from chaos, order, right? Order from chaos is the whole plan. Let's talk about money. Flex says, seems to me like the entire situation in Canada is just a massive Ponzi scheme that needs more and more people coming here and paying taxes so it doesn't collapse. And that is why the Liberals won't take their foot off the gas on immigration. Logic would dictate that if they really wanted to fix the housing crisis, they'd close the borders, at least temporarily. So why aren't they? And I really don't want to hear that they need people to fill jobs, because it's just not true. Look at the insane lineups for low-paying jobs, right? There you go. He's right. And so it's very interesting. I think that that's very true. I've also read further colors saying that they're dumping all of the money that we're giving them in taxes now that they're supposedly sending to Ukraine. They're putting that into CBDCs. There's somebody who wrote that saying they're going to use that as the foundation for the central bank digital currencies, all of this money that they're putting in. And I don't think that they need to do that. They're just stealing the money. They're laundering it to their friends, insiders, whatever. They're just stealing the money and having a good old time until the currency collapses. Because when they reset the money, they're not going to need assets. They're just going to be able to turn it all off. We're the assets. Our money, our paychecks are the liquidity that the banks run on, right? Like, they don't need a big nest egg of money to start this whole thing. They just need full control. And that's what they're moving to take right now, right? Like, and we're watching it. So it's very interesting. And they're using these excuses to continue the Ponzi scheme, expand the taxpayer base. They want to go into Africa and bring in the central bank digital currency in Africa to continue the Ponzi scheme, because the Ponzi, if you keep getting new recruits into the Ponzi scheme, it doesn't collapse. So they need Africa. Okay, so that's why everything's so damn expensive, because they're trying to cover the losses of keeping this whole fantasy going. I think, right? They will print as much money. Again, maybe they don't need to cover the losses, right? Anyway, banks, gas stations I think this has got to be BC way. The new normal, says Clyde Do Something. BC perspective, welcome to British Columbia, $2.12. Diesel's $1.95. Diesel's what they use to move all your groceries and goods, right? Diesel in Ontario is like $1.60 right now. And this person says, FU Trudeau, it's $2.35, $2.28, and $2.10 for regular. $2.10 is regular, $2.35 is supreme, right? So there you go. Wild stuff. The gasoline taxes, further Ponzi scheme. What are they doing with all the money? What are they doing? Do they need it? Do they need it for stability? Is that it? Or they don't need it at all. They're just stealing it wholesale, and they'll transition over to a central bank digital currency, and tough luck, right? Tough luck if you're not on it. Here's Theo Fleury talking about the beginnings of a central bank digital currency. Theo Fleury says, this email, forwarding for your information, this email is only for Canada. We've been asked to share the following information by a fellow Canadian in case you aren't aware and want to take action. Please feel free to share this with other Canadians. The federal government has quietly begun the creation of personal information banks, PIB, to collect and store data on Canadians. We were not consulted nor informed about the creation or existence of these databases, and they're being collected without our permission or knowledge. Categories of information include biometrics, that's DNA, blood type, face, eye and facial scan, fingerprints, etc., personal biography, medical history, financial history, credit information, opinions or views of or about individuals, and much more. Here's a link to the government website describing the PIBs. Scroll to the last section for categories of information. We'll look at that in a sec. The Canadian Revenue Agency has quietly added it to their privacy terms so that in order to submit an application for benefits, such as the one-time housing top-up they're starting to offer in December, you must click that you agree to terms including being described in Personal Information Bank under development in order to submit your application. It's also a term in the Canadian Pension Plan application. It's quite likely that it will be a term for submitting your income tax return, so read the privacy terms when filling your taxes this year. The federal government is using the federal health transfers to bribe the premiers to adopt a big tech-style data for services healthcare system. They've already done this. The federal government is not in charge of healthcare, but and Health Canada used to be about putting out like nutrition guidelines and things like that. And instead now they're trying to use Health Canada as a driving force, a governing force of the provinces. And they've bought in with money that comes with, like, we'll give you this many millions of dollars or billions of dollars for healthcare in the province, but these strings are attached. We want information on the patients that we're serving and things like that. And it can sound really reasonable, but it's very insidious, I think. So the big tech style data for service healthcare system, I think we're already in that style of infrastructure. The government wants more fine-grained control. This means that your personal health records that used to be private and confidential between you and your doctor will now be entered into the PIBs to be shared between the federal government, their stakeholders, and whoever else they decide can have access to it, such as the WEF or WHO. They lay it all out in their Department Plan for Health Canada 22-23. There's no mention of hiring healthcare workers. It's all data, digitization, AI, vaccines, and so on. And we're going to talk about AI in a minute. This is a big deal. Now is the time to make some noise. If you have a podcast, a following, a blog, a friend, please get the word out. Flood the PM, the premiers, the ministers, the CRA, anyone you can think of with letters and phone calls. Consider sending a letter in lieu of a tax return if you're in a position to do so, or other civil disobedience. They do not have the right to just start stealing our personal information and using our own tax dollars to bribe us into compliance. What they have done is a lot of nerve. So pretty brazen stuff, right? Hold on, I'll find the information here. Okay, I just scrolled down to the bottom of the site here, and it says categories of personal information. It says the description section in a personal information bank describes the personal information in the records to which the bank relates. Treasury Board Secretariat has established the following categories of personal information, which give examples of specific elements of personal information that fall under each category. The purpose of the categories is to reduce the number of personal information elements that need to be listed in the description section. These categories are representative of the personal information collected by most institutions, and they now appear in many of the registered PIBs. So biographical information, work history, curriculum vitae, resume, family information, hobbies, interests, biometric information, blood type, eye or facial scan, DNA finger, handprints, etc. I've never been fingerprinted. I was fingerprinted in like grade school because they were worried about kidnappers, and everybody in my grade school got fingerprinted, believe it or not. But other than that, I've never been fingerprinted or had a facial scan that I'm aware of, other than, what my phone does. Hand scan, I've never done a hand scan. I've never had my retina scanned or anything like that. So I don't think any of that data exists. But it's interesting that they think that it should. Contact information, work or home information, including postal code and email addresses, telephone, fax, cell phone number, citizenship status, credit card information, credit history, criminal checks and history, date of birth, date of death. Date of death? I wonder if that could be edited in their PIBs, right? We need 100,000 new voters. Employee identification numbers, employment equity information, employee personnel information, financial information, gender, language, medical information, name, opinion or views of or about individuals. Opinion or views of about individuals. I don't know that hate is a strong enough word to use for Justin Trudeau. Record that in there, though. Okay? I don't wish him physical harm. I wish him to bear responsibility for the damage that he's done. I hope that's very clear. Hatred does not necessarily mean wishing somebody harm. Hatred means I want that person to be accountable for the damage they've caused. Views about individuals. What an insane thing. Other identification numbers, like that's completely invalid. Like the government should not be keeping track on my views unless my views dip into the criminal for whatever reason, right? Like, get lost, the government. Other identification numbers, fishing licenses, driver's licenses, photos, physical attributes. They want Facebook for you. Place of birth, place of death, signature, social insurance number, right? If you go to your PIB, it'll show you your place of death, right? Dun, dun, dun. Greg says, I try to do my best. Now, I thought this was good. I was going to leave this till a bit later, but we're going to look at Polyev and Israel later, and I think it's interesting to look at that. And this was going to go there, but I think it's important to mention this here. I think Greg is bang on. I think this is exactly what's going to happen. It's better articulated than I can articulate it, I guess. I've been trying desperately to get this perspective out and failing. But this is essentially what I keep saying when I keep saying that it's going to be hard to convince people who vote Polyev in, because he's going to do the things that he says he's going to do, like axe the tax and, maybe even tie some immigration numbers down to the number of houses being made. But he's going to amp the number of houses being made because of modular homes. And then all of a sudden we're right on the same track we're on now, right? So I feel like we're going to be manipulated. And when Polyev says, yeah, we're going to tie the number of immigrants to this, he's just going to make enough houses for all those immigrants, and bingo bango bongo, he's going to say, technically I've delivered, and look at how good the economy is, I axed the tax. And people are going to really like it, right? And my counter is, or my concern is, he's going to check all those boxes. People are going to say, see, he did exactly what he said he was going to do. He's for Canada, just like we said. You stop being whatever, anti-Semitic, Islamophobic, right-wing, alt-right, blah, 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 whatever it is. And vote for Pierre. And this is the problem, because he's not for Canada, right? He's actually for the globalist agenda that has been encompassing Canada for the last 40 years. Greg says, I try my best not to speculate and try to only work with verifiable information, but I'm going to speculate based off of what I've seen. As of now, there won't be a federal election until October 2025. I'm speculating that the Conservative Party won't take power in Ottawa. I don't say this because I believe they don't have the support of Canadians. They obviously do. I'm saying this for a different reason. Stick with me here. There's an illusion that has been crafted over the last 100 or so years in Canada, and it's very well maintained. And that is the illusion of political opposition. We're getting to the point now where the Conservative Party is being forced into a corner. Poilievre is having to make statements about getting rid of the carbon taxes and standing up against the WEF. The problem is the Conservative Party doesn't actually take a hardline stance against against the Paris Agreement, the Migrant Compact, the Pandemic Treaty, or any of the other international agreements like them. So if the Conservative Party gets elected, one of two things will inevitably happen. Either they will, in fact, cancel all forms of carbon taxation, actually lower immigration levels, reject the Great Reset in all its facets, or it will maintain all of these things after promising the opposite. If they redirect and repackage carbon taxes, maintain high levels of mass immigration, continue to implement the new urban agenda and sustainable development goals, conservative Canadians will be furious, and the CPC will prove themselves to be a party of liars and globalist sympathizers. This will take 3 years. This is me just breaking in really quick. This will take 3 years. It'll take time to realize that Pierre's talking out both sides of his mouth. But there's going to be a group of people who say, look, he axed the tax, he did this, he did that, and he did what he said he's going to do. You have to make compromises. It's politics, or something to that effect, right? And it's bullshit. Like, it's complete and utter bullshit. And it's going to take 3 years for people to realize it. And then once people realize it, they're going to start wedging just like Trudeau's wedging. And they're going to make Bernier or whoever else is trying for the PPC or whatever look like crazy people in whatever context the next 3 years will bring, right? So it is, I think he's on the right track here. Back to this. Support will plummet. After that period of time that people wake up and realize, support will plummet. Now, maybe not, because you've got that group of people. Like Trudeau's been in power 8 years. He doesn't have support. It's in fact pretty clear that people hate him, right? So could Poilievre win an election where he's, gets 170 instead of 210? Probably, right? 172 or something like that? Yeah, probably, right? And so he's got time. And basically, if you think of these terms of governance as a Kickstarter, and you've got goals in order to, like, you have to achieve these goals, but then you've got stretch goals. Justin Trudeau got every one of his stretch goals and bonus goals, right? He's going to get all sorts of, perks for his communist bunker when everything goes sideways, right? Because of how well he's done. He's been very divisive and awful for Canada, but for the globalists, he's been great, right? So he's going to be rewarded. And maybe Poilievre doesn't get as many goals accomplished for the globalist people that the CPC works for. I don't know about Poilievre himself. The CPC works for. He may not achieve as many, but he will be able to govern for the next 10 years without inciting a revolt. So after the first 3 years, where people start saying, hey, he's not who he said he was, basically, or we're not as happy as we thought we'd be, then you'll get some divisive elections through then, and then they'll pass it off to the next puppet who will say, I'll do everything that Poilievre said he would do and didn't do, right? If they do, in fact, cancel out all carbon taxes, depart from the various global agendas, and cut immigration, the unbelievably powerful international globalists and their billionaire partners will lose a massive foothold in North America and the global network that has been carefully crafted over the last century. There's no way in heck that they would just let that happen. Look at how many politicians and political parties are controlled on both sides by this international network. It's pretty much all of them. Look at what happens to the nations that go against this network. They go absolutely obliterated, and their leaders are assassinated. The CPC isn't about to put themselves in that position. It would be suicide. Yes. Lula, they had millions of people in the streets protesting against illegitimate Lula in Brazil. Okay. Now he's cracking down and using the Supreme Court, and we're going to talk about Brazil in a minute too, to silence everybody. And still, the Brazilians can't rise up and self-govern. They wanted Bolsonaro. They couldn't do it. Brazil's a small geographical country, not like Canada, and they had millions of people in the streets upset about what happened, and they couldn't change it. You see what I'm saying? So I think that he's exactly right. There's a group of people, international people, who believe that they're in charge and they're running things, and the CPC works for them, not us. Just like the LPC works for them, not us. Okay? And we're being placated. Okay, back to this. The Conservative Party is not going to stand up to the global network that they have participated in and propped up for decades. Harper is the chairman of the International Democratic Union, of which the CPC belongs to. It was co-founded by George H.W. Bush. Harper has attended Bilderberg, the Bohemian Grove, and was a sweetheart of the WEF. Harper has endorsed Polyev as the leader, as did Mulrooney last year. The current CPC has members, including the deputy leader, who have attended Bilderberg conferences. Their minister of the Treasury is a trilateral commission member. All of that's true. So why? So by doing what Polyev is apparently promising, it will be political suicide for the party, because the establishment won't just sit back and let Polyev undo decades of work. By not doing any of the things he's promising, support among conservative Canadians will nosedive, but they won't be turning to the Liberal Party either. Yeah, I don't know, man. They turned back to the Conservatives pretty quick. Conservative Canadians are watching things carefully, and it seems like this is the last chance for the CPC to fulfill the illusion of actual political opposition. They're damned if they do and damned if they don't. I believe the election will be either outright stolen or something else will happen in the next 19 months that will indefinitely postpone elections or change the course of the process entirely. Thanks for sticking with me. What do you think will happen? Yeah, I think they're going to try and derail the Trump presidency, the Trump 2024 election, and that could bleed into Canada, and it would solve that problem nicely, right? Some kind of emergency, whatever, coalition governing something or other, and just to screw us and take us off the track again. So yeah, I think that there's certainly something to think about there. It's interesting. Dion says, why? Ace of Spades says, this is huge, Canada. Why was this a bad move for Canada? So Canada enters the 1974, Pierre Elliott Trudeau signed Canada up with the Bank of International Settlements, changing the function of the Bank of Canada. And then since that, this is the federal government net debt. Okay? So debt, lots and lots of money, right? Lots and lots of money in debt. And so fundamentally, the Bank of Canada works for international bankers and not Canadians. We could fix that, couldn't we? Right? Except that the globalist powers that be don't want us to fix that. Right? Here's Peter Sweden. He says Canada just increased the carbon tax by 23%. The farmers are not happy and are out protesting against it. Do you stand with the farmers? So good job, farmers. I didn't think we'd see the farmers because of the supply management deals. But yeah, there's lots of tractors out there, right? Not all farms are supply managed in Canada, just the dairy farms. So that's, not great, but it's interesting to note. Let's talk about censorship and Brazil. Yeah, there's lots today. Vincent says, this morning on Victoria Ave in Vineland, Niagara, Ontario, someone used a cordless grinder to cut the bottom off the post of this speed camera. How unfortunate. What an efficient piece of equipment. So, yep, there you go. Speed camera. It's we're not doing this. We're not doing this. People have to buy in. People have to say, yes, we want to be subjugated like this. Please subjugate us more. They have to buy in. And if they don't buy in, then you have a conflict, right? So Globe Politics says Hello, everyone. Thanks very much for watching. This is just a short version of a longer show. If you'd like to get the whole show, you can go over to CanadaPoly.com and sign up for a subscription. Just look in the drop-down tab for Shop and Donate and look for subscriptions, and you'll get immediate access to the full show. Love to see you. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful